We now have the candidates for Commission Zone 1. The first candidate who will be speaking is Peggy Bellflower. Jessica Reelan. The second is Mike Colodi. The third is John Redmond, and the fourth is Peggy Bellflower. The questions that we have asked them, which they have just been handed. Again, the mission of the New Smyrna Beach Residents Coalition is to preserve the unique charm and special character of our city by providing a path for residents to communicate opinions with a united voice on issues relating to our city's quality of life. The Executive Board, with input from the leadership group, asks each of our candidates for City Commission Zone 1 to address the following within the 5-minute allotted time. The procedure will be the same as it was for the mayoral candidates. Question 1. What steps should the city take, if any, to improve water quality in the Indian River Lagoon and our aquifer? Question 2. What steps would you propose to give the citizens of New Smyrna Beach an opportunity for real input into the governance of our city? Question 3. Given the growth that has already occurred on State Route 44, what recommendations, if any, would you propose to alter its current use and appearance? Number 4, what is your vision for the North Dixie Freeway in the next 10 years? And lastly, should wetlands be used when calculating total building density?
Good evening, New Smyrna residents. I'm so excited to be here. I am Jessica Reelan, and I am running for City Commission Zone 1. As being a Central Florida native my whole life, I grew up here in New Smyrna at the beaches. I lived in Sorrento, which is about 45 minutes away. But water has always been a main concern for all of the residents here in Florida. I think that can be apparent. So the quality in the Indian River Lagoon and the aquifer, I really think we should be having a larger discussion and putting those plans on the feet and the heels of the legislator, because ultimately we can put in place what we feel is necessary here for New Smyrna, but ultimately it will trickle down from Daytona, and we'll end up, if they're not doing what they need to be doing, we're going to be ending up having the same issue. So I think we're going to need to really make sure that our legislative leaders are helping us address this issue at the larger front. What steps would you propose to give the citizens of New Smyrna the opportunity to have real input? Well, one thing I really was shocked that we don't have, especially with the amount of things that are on the dais when we have city commission meetings, are zone meetings. I really found that very shocking that we're getting that information at the city commission meetings, and we're not having our own zone meetings as separate and apart. If I am elected, I would like to have zone meetings. I will have them myself if my other commissioners won't join in. And I will be discussing with you in length, and it won't be timed, but we will have meetings and we will sit together, and they will be live streamed, because a large population of our residents here are not able to come out a lot of the time to come to things like this and be able to attend events like this. My husband included. My husband's permanently and totally disabled, and unfortunately from post-traumatic stress disorder, so he has a hard time being in crowds, but he is a voting member of our community, and I think we need to be capturing all of our community as a whole. Given the growth that has already occurred on 44. So one of the things that drew me here in the first place, when we moved here in 2010, was the fact that I was accustomed to the smaller town feel. Growing up in Sorrento, it's all nurseries and plants, and there's nothing really, but needless to say, I was accustomed to having that feel. My husband's from a larger city, and needless to say, we were here every weekend. So when I look at 44, I started traveling across the state and I started looking at other coastal communities because I knew we weren't the only one to be having this issue. And the one that I really loved the most actually was Amelia Island in Fernandina Beach. It's exquisite, and that's the best way to put it. It really has all the amenities that we would want to enjoy. However, it didn't take away from the natural habitat, and it preserved all of the natural treasures that we come to love as being Florida residents. So that's one of the things I would like to do is look at keeping the natural foliage and actually having a long-term plan in place for the design and the total appearance for 44. And you all would be in part of that design. I think as a resident, you have a voice here and you should be able to put your perspective in place. North Dixie Freeway, well, that's right in my backyard, and I feel like we should be looking to that first. And all I hear about is that it's a big headache to try and develop that because there's a lot of red tape. I feel like we need to be looking there first. We need to try to remove the red tape, and we need to entice development there first because I think we can really give that a huge facelift and have a better feel to it. The wetlands, I think that they should be calculated in the total density with building, but that is how I feel about that. So thank you very much. I'm Jessica Reeland for City Commission Zone 1.
Afternoon or evening. Number 1 and number 5 are tied together. Indian River Lagoon. Indian River Lagoon has become degraded over the years. I live off the waterway. I used to be able to see 1 foot or 4 feet in the water behind my dock. I can now see 1. What we have to do as a region is limit the use of fertilizers, limit the use of, or add the use of stormwater detention that controls not only the quality, but the quantity of water and removes the solids so they don't flow into the lagoon. It is a regional answer. Wetlands, I'll jump to number 5. I've been familiar with and worked with wetlands control and protection over my entire career of about 45 years. Good part of it private practice, good part of it government practice. Wetlands, any piece of land within a developable parcel should be calculated towards wetlands. However, it should be a weighted component. You should only get, let's say, 1 unit or 20% credit for a wetlands area, whereas uplands you can get 1 credit. If you have a road right away, you should get no credits for that. Buffers should also be assigned a category where they restrict the development within them. St. John's Water, where the state of Florida has a 25-foot buffer. That's really insufficient. If you're familiar with any tract of land that gets developed, the buffer is really insufficient. You don't get the bird life, you don't get the water life, you don't get the vegetation because of the influence of sun. So in priority waterways, that should be increased. One of the reasons why I've chosen to run is I'm not happy with the responsiveness of city government to the public. I can't think of how many times I've been and appeared under the 3-minute rule for the last 5 or 6 years before the commission. Spoke my piece, they've shaken their head yes, and that's the end of it. And I know a lot of other people feel that way. That problem goes right to the top, goes right to the city manager. City manager places such tight controls on her department heads and how they respond that it's almost impossible for us as single citizens to get a true response from our government. That's got to change. That's one of the main reasons I'm running. I'm currently on planning and zoning. I enjoy planning and zoning, well experienced, and I prefer the professional approach. Unfortunately, except for variances, which are a final say, the commission has the right to and does often override the planning and zoning board. Planning and zoning board, appointed by the commissioner, are people who have special expertise in looking at these matters. In the past, it was stocked by people who had one view of the future of our city. However, now it's very diverse, and you're seeing some denials and some approvals that would never have happened in the past. Looking towards Route 44, yes, it's not consistent. They're studying landscaping now, hopefully to improve it, so drivers will have a better appearance coming down the road. That's very nice. It doesn't attack or do anything to the overdevelopment next to it. We're kind of stuck. Everything that we have there is a PUD, which I do not like, and we're going to have to live with it. North Dixie Freeway is a vital artery in our town. It should be used for restaurants, tire stores, other community service types of uses. So us on the beach side do not have to drive far out to the other side of the highway to get some of these services. They can be more catered to the public and provide a continuance of service. I thank you for this time. I have a few seconds left, and I think I'm done. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is John Redmond, and I'm running for City Commissioner for Zone 1. I live beachside, obviously. I live north of Flagler Avenue, just one block north of the Crawford ramp, in about the middle of Kirkland Road. The first question about improving the quality of water in the Indian River Lagoon. My feeling is this is a storm water runoff issue. And all new developments should be required to have more retention ponds built to slow down that water runoff. But it's also going to take us studying what is causing the pollution in our rivers and streams, because that's our best asset that we have in New Smyrna Beach. It's our waterways and our beach. And there was a study done recently that determined that we thought it was septics that were causing the problem, but it came back high in nitrogen, which is pointing to fertilizers. So we really need to study that issue to see if fertilizers are one of the things that we need to regulate a little more heavily. Number two, what steps would I propose to give the citizens of New Smyrna Beach real input? Well, I agree with Jessica, zone meetings. I'm shocked that we don't have those. But we should also be maintaining individual websites for the commissioners so that after, even before the meetings, people can go to your website and ask questions, give you input, tell us the things that they're concerned about that they want to see brought up at the next commission meeting. So not only should we be streaming our commission meetings online, we should be meeting with the people in our zone on a regular basis and maintain those websites so that they can communicate with us. The earlier group, the mayoral candidates, had a question about building trust. It's about communication and being transparent with what we're doing at all levels. Number three, given the growth that has already occurred on SR 44, I cannot stand this term SR 44 corridor. I cannot stand it. Why? Because it screams overdevelopment. It's the SR 44 corridor. Come on, it's the entrance to our town. And right now we only have one entrance to our town. Thank goodness, right? So let's beautify it. I would like to see medians with landscaping. We have some. I feel like we need more. I would like to see the natural vegetative barrier. If it's not natural right now, let's plant some native plants there and let's grow that natural vegetative barrier a little bit more. And I don't want to see the entrance to our town turn into Dunlop. I just don't want to see it. I don't believe we should be chasing big box retail stores. Yes, we get property tax from the commercial building, but we don't benefit from the sales tax. In a very little way we benefit from that sales tax. We need services for the local community. We need businesses that the local citizens can take advantage of on the entrance to our town. North Dixie Freeway. You know, I agree with what the prior two candidates said, but what I would like to see happen on North Dixie Freeway, especially where we have the abandoned car dealerships, we need an incubator in this town for young people who want to start businesses that come out of UCF or Embry-Riddle or Daytona State. That's economic development. Let's get these kids that are coming out with degrees in technology, drone operation, things that I don't know anything about. And SCORE is here. The retired executives are here. Let's give them an incubator so that one of these young people in our community might start a business that can employ 200 or 300 people. And then we have to fight to keep that person here and not move that business out of our community. But that's real economic development. Should wetlands be used when calculating total building density? Whatever restricts the density. The density should be restricted. And that means that only the developable part of that land should be calculated for how many lots per acre there are going to be. But we can't throw in all the undevelopable land and say, okay, you get to build this many units because you've got this much wetland. I just don't think that makes any sense. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Peggy Bellflower, and I am running for New Smyrna Beach City Commissioner in Zone 1. Thank you all for being here tonight. Thank you all for voting for all three of the upcoming positions in the election. The primary is August 28th, and it's of utmost importance to vote in the primary. Question 1. What steps should the city take to improve the water quality in the Indian River Lagoon? The city needs to do every single thing it can do to work at saving the Indian River Lagoon by improving its water quality. The city needs to ensure that there are no septic systems contiguous to the river. The city needs to enforce against the use of harmful pesticides and fertilizers whose nutrients are killing the river. We have a great program where volunteers, local volunteers, make oyster nets. And they take oysters from our local restaurants that are donated and weave them into plastic liners and place them in the river to try to upstart our oyster population again. I would recommend that we not use plastic liners, that we use recycled liners that will break down eventually as the new oysters take hold. The oysters also that come from our local restaurants are not local oysters, and they have bacteria that harms our Indian River Lagoon. What we must do as a city is ask our volunteers to let the bacteria die, which means setting those donated oysters in the sun for a long period of time, not for a week, not for 2 weeks, for a long period of time to kill all foreign bacteria before the oysters are placed into the Indian River Lagoon. We need to keep our waterways and our mangroves intact. That's where our quality of life resides. The next question is, what steps would I propose to give the citizens of New Smyrna Beach an opportunity for real input? I'm sure many people here, as am I one, has spoken many times at city commission meetings in the past numerous years, and our voices go unheard. We're not listened to. 3 minutes and we're sent back to our seat, and our commission, the majority of our city commission doesn't listen to us. It votes with what it's been led to do by our city manager. And that's where we get the majority votes that damage our city. Thus, I think that all citizens should be heard by the city commission. And if I'm elected, I will make my vote according to what the citizens of New Smyrna Beach want, and not what the out of town, out of state, out of country mega developers that are bulldozing our New Smyrna Beach lands are wanting for their own private gain. Next question, given the growth that has occurred on State Road 44, what recommendations would I propose to alter its current use and appearance? I'm in favor of the short moratorium that we have while the landscape buffers are improved, but we also need to look at the planned unit developments that were granted a decade or more ago, and then those planned unit developments come to the city and they ask for variances to add to their density. We need to stop allowing variances on old planned unit developments that come up out of nowhere and ask for more. The city commission majority gives those variances and lets them build what they want to build. What's my vision for North Dixie Freeway in the next 10 years? I'd like to see us repurpose the car lots, the concrete jungles that have been abandoned, and those car lots have moved to State Road 44 in order to overbuild there. We need to repurpose those. We need to have an economic summit and meet with the citizens and with businessmen and businesswomen and make improvements to Highway 1, Dixie Freeway, and not to let it lie dormant and just let it go to ruin. Lastly, should wetlands be used when calculating total building?
Okay, what did you think about tonight? I agree. I am so impressed with all of the great ideas, the energy, the commitment that we have heard tonight. Makes me very, very proud to be a citizen of New Smyrna Beach, because I can tell you, people who are aware of what we're doing here in the way of growing our own inclusiveness, if you will, are very proud of what we're doing. And in fact, other cities are taking note. And if it weren't for your participation and the dedication of those who are willing to offer themselves for public service, we wouldn't have the community we have. And I can assure you, with this amount of energy and commitment, a city we are going to continue to be proud of. Thank you again for coming.
Again, thank everybody for coming.
Where's the rest of the candidate? Why Jake's not here? Explain. I don't understand.
The reason that we did not have Zone 2, this is important, is because there's only 2 candidates. They moved to the general election, so they do not have to face a primary. So we decided not to confuse issues. We hope to have another forum prior to the general election, but we wanted to host those candidates who are in the primaries. Does that help everybody? Yeah. And please get out to people how important our primaries are. I'm sure you know, in the primary, if you win 50% of the vote plus 1, you are then elected. So we could have final elections out of the primaries. So thank you for coming. Please spend some time with our candidates. I think Jake Sachs and Travis Deaver, are you both here? I think they are. Feel free to talk with them too. There's Jake in the back. Thank you so much for being here, Commissioner, and we appreciate all of you. And thanks.